after one, children's hospital, anything. So don't always agree with some of their policies, but they are very, very well known in the area. But I myself, I've called myself a prepper for a long time. Um, I just believe we all need to get prepared and we all have to encourage each other and try to be supportive no matter what your views are on various things. The more people who get prepared, the better off we all are. So, yeah, if you have any preparedness questions, you can fire away if you'd like.
So let me welcome some of our people here because we have some superior people in our group, and I get lost in the chat, and then I have to go back and I get lost again. I'm very easy to confuse. In case you haven't told, in case you can't tell, Lori's 50 Kitchen Pantry. Welcome. Lori just got out of the hospital recently. I really hope she's doing better. And we're praying for you, Lori. Thank you very much for being here. I know that it puts a strain on your body. And that means an awful lot to us. So if you need to leave early, we understand. Just take care of yourself. That's what's most important. Little Lone Prepper, welcome. Let me see what Lori has to say here. Well, I had a setback too, Lori. We had a major ice storm come through, and the parish called out and asked for volunteers to help with cutting off broken branches out of the trees and removing them and stuff like that. 3 men showed up to do the work. So what I have discovered is that maybe branch removal from trees after an ice storm is not the best use of a 70-year-old with an artificial hip, and not some of the best things that I could do to serve the community. So I probably won't be doing that again. I've been set back a little bit in my recovery for my hip, and I've been paying for it ever since. So, we just do what we can when we can, and I think that's got to be the motto of all of us in the prepping genre is do what we can when we can, as much as we can, and that's what we got. Okay, so let me start off. I've got some questions I kind of prepped Prepper Potpourri with, and we talked about it a little bit. She's also got one that is one of those things that's very, very concerning to her. I think it's concerning to all of us in the community. And I think it's why a lot of you follow me. And so because you follow me, I think you should follow her because we kind of have the same philosophy. And so let me kind of start off a general discussion, and then we'll get into some of the specifics I want to ask her. But let's just get into a general discussion about what has happened to the state of preparedness channels, of preparedness channels, of survival channels. When I looked at it, when I joined, when I basically became part of YouTube, it was because of the influence of people like Prepper Potpourri and the fact that she was showing us how to get through to the other side in case of a natural or a man-made disaster. So let's kind of have a generic thought here. What are your thoughts about the current state of preparedness channels, survival channels, and how it's affecting our mentality and our ability to actually prepare?
I am worried about it. I have been on YouTube for probably 10 years making videos, and I see the change that's happened. A lot of channels started out giving really good information and very sincere in what they're doing, and they've changed. And I'm not saying they aren't sincere anymore, but it seems like people have went down what I call the fear porn path, and you watch their videos and you get anxiety. It's like, oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen tomorrow. Instead of just presenting something, it always has to be a spin on it, and very often a conspiracy spin. Now, what's amazing to me, that makes your channel large. I mean, you get a lot of subscribers. I guess we all like to watch horror movies, right? Must be that. But it's not good because they stop giving out really good information, I think. And But the people that are really to blame are all those people that watch those channels and continue to watch them as they go down that path, because they influence what that channel is going to say. Because they think, oh, this is what people want to hear, I'm going to keep on doing this. And if you do it long enough, you start believing the whole thing. And I call it going down the rabbit hole. I I've gotten more into the cooking side of things and whatever, because I had to distance myself a bit. The election time was very, very hard because everybody was screaming at each other, whatever side. And there's always some conspiracy. The government's doing something. And, it's kind of amazing that every single thing there's somebody to blame for instead of having random chaos, which I think exists. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I quite often, a lot of the fear porn is around one data point. And then there's a lot of lack of knowledge about certain things that are exacerbated with the fear porn. And for an example, we know every year that the National Guard has to do their 2 weeks exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And yet every year when a National Guard unit convoys to do their training, somebody's going to get on YouTube and say, oh no, the National Guard is activating and we're going to be under martial law soon.
Yes, well, in Texas, your governor even got involved in that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, well, our governor has nationalized or has activated the National Guard, but it's to protect the borders of Texas because the federal government won't do it.
No, I don't mean that. This was when, what was the name of the thing? It was where actually the National Guard and some other branches were working together. And it was supposed to be like it's a covert operation that they were practicing, that they would be in another country. And rumors that they were invading Texas, which, that'd be the least part you can invade.
The other one is that Hi Prepping by Faith, Pamela O'Neill, Acer Rebrun, Bouger Prepper, my favorite from down south. Gosh, the little lone prepper, Manny Fragosa. Let me see who else is here. Gosh, what a great group of people. Dragon Slayer, welcome. But anyhow, and then we've got in special forces. You got 3 different phases: phase 1, 2, and 3 of your training. And so phase 3 training, which is where you really become the true Green Beret. They have an annual exercise, and that annual exercise is of course counterinsurgency, which is taking care of bad guys infiltrating inside our cities. So it has to be done inside a city. And so you're going to see come April, May, when we start having those exercises, it's going to be, oh no, the special forces are declaring martial law in various cities, and people just get kind of upset about it. There was one guy put out an analysis today that said, because they're deploying ambulances with some M1 Abrams tanks to Poland, we must be going to war, because you don't ship ambulances unless you're going to be going to war. And I said, oh no, we had redeployment of forces to Germany, Reforger, for 20 years. And we averaged 14 deaths per week for 2 weeks, 28 deaths, just in military exercises, let alone no live fire or anything else. So yeah, we have to have that stuff there. So all kinds of stuff gets put out. And one point does not a trend make.
Well, and the other thing is, but the thing is that they'll click on something and the question is out there. And there's a lot of people that don't do their own research, which again is faulty. But I know here in Grand Rapids, I think it was 3 years ago, they had for Dirty Bomb. And that was even Red Cross was in on it, I think, 3 different branches of the military. Very interesting to see the whole thing. But then everybody was like, oh, they think there's a dirty bomb. It's going to be coming, And it's like, no, this is part of their regular exercises. But that was a government cover-up. So it's what people said. So, yeah. But it's all the time. But the thing is, it's getting to the point where maybe there is a point that can be made and we won't hear it, because I just kind of turn off these things and, I'm not even going to watch the video anymore. But maybe they do have something to say, and that's kind of sad. But the truth is, that's how you grow your channel and get a lot of subscribers.
Well,
So,
in radio communications, we refer to it as standing above the grass. So if you look on an oscilloscope, the radio spectrum has all kinds of little ups and downs, spurious emissions, we call them. And so you've got all this radio electricity coming in, and you're looking for that one spike. Well, if there's a lot of interference, or we call it grass, okay, and it's the grass is up to here and your spike is here, it's difficult to tell that spike when it's inside all that grass. And that's kind of our lives. If there's a whole bunch of minor stuff that could possibly happen but is not probable, then the one spike that says this is what you need to prepare for becomes washed out with all the other stuff that you're listening to that really is insignificant. And so we just need, what I tell people is mow your lawn, get rid of all that spurious stuff so that you can see what is really there that you really need to focus on and pay attention to.
well, and some channels, this is their livelihood. This is what they do to make a living. And that kind of changes a bit. I still work full time. I have a job. But if this is what you make your living on, you have to give people what they want, I think. I still think it should be truthful and above board. But then some people are also selling gear. Well, if you're selling gear, you're advertising, you're trying to get people to buy. And I mean, there's all kinds of different things that people do. But, one of the biggest channels people always point a finger at, and I'll just say, is Nate from Canadian Prepper. I was his first subscriber, the very first.
Really? Wow. I just got an alert from him up here. It says breaking news, Russian nuke submarine on U.S. coast.
Okay.
I was in intelligence for 21 years. You want to know a secret?
They were there quite often.
They've been there since I was on active duty in 1971. So, that's nothing new.
And I really think Nate is sincere. I mean, and I think he has gotten a lot of people who give him information. He really has bought into the whole thing. Yes, it's helped his channel and everything else, but I don't think he's doing it to spread on truth. I really don't.
No. I don't think he's doing it maliciously.
No. But that's it. When you hear a little bit, and if you aren't in the military, you don't know, you're going to believe these things. But the thing that I worry about is it could install fear in yourself. And one thing that happens with fear is people just freeze. They stop prepping. They stop doing anything. That's the most dangerous. I guess if it means people go out and buy groceries and do things, at least it's got a good action. But that is not what always happens. And for some reason today, people seem to suffer from anxiety, something terrible, no matter what their age is. So
what gets me more so than I like Nate. I really like Nate. And I think that sometimes he has his analysis sometimes is fantastic. I mean, he has a very good psychology background where he can really take a look at people and emotions, everything else. And he also has some really good sources that provide him with some good information. I also like New York Prepper. Now, both of those two are my kind of go-to guys that they're going to give me some information.
Now, wait a minute. If you were bothered by language, are you able to handle New York Prepper then?
I think you're talking.
Oh, I'm thinking Angry Prepper. Never mind.
Talking about Angry Prepper.
I'm angry. He's to me
New
New
York
York.
Prepper is Greg and.
Okay, I don't know New York Prepper. Then I'll have to check him out.
Yeah, New York Prepper, NY Prepper, and he actually left New York and moved to Pennsylvania so he could get away from the gun laws in New York. He does he does probably about as good a research as anybody before he puts it on YouTube, and I really, really like him. Hello, Cat Lady Homestead 23 Meow. Wow, welcome. So and then I really, really like Southern Prepper 1. And
He hasn't been making as much lately, though, has he?
he's doing daily boots on the ground updates where he's getting in, information from his viewers as far as food shortages, cost of fuel, and stuff like that. So he's putting out about a 10-15 minute video every day on food shortages and all that kinds of stuff. So yeah, he's doing. I think he does a fantastic job as well. I've got one on here that's following us that I really just totally admire, and that's Prepping by Faith. And so she does a lot of very good in-depth analysis on a variety of topics. And so I always watch anything she puts out. Another one I like his news stories is a guy by the name of Pepper Dog, and he's out of Atlanta, Georgia area, and I really like him. So His Amazing Grace, welcome. Yes, I do watch Monkey Works. He's right here in Austin. I'm trying to find a way where I can get a cup of coffee with him. So yeah, he's really got his stuff together. I really admire him. He's a phenomenal source, and I try to watch him at least daily. Dave Simmons, welcome. Okay, I'm sorry. Go back to Prepper Potpourri. You were about to say, and I started welcoming people and cut you off. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, if you think of the channels that have changed since I first started, most of these channels that you named didn't exist. There were quite a few heavy hitter women channels that no longer exist, and I don't know why. But you really don't even, I don't really watch Prepper Princess much, but in the beginning, she was about prepping, and she's really changed more to, I think, being very frugal.
Yes,
so there really isn't that much out there for women prepping. And if you are a prepping channel and you talk about cooking or food, you can lose a lot of the guys on your channel because they think, you're not a real prepper.
She just put out a video maybe in the last week or 10 days. And she said, okay, I'm going to share a secret with you. I really am a millionaire. And here's the stocks I recommend that you buy for dividends. And I go, whoa. So that caught me by surprise. But, that after seeing everything around being frugal prepper, that was something else. Joseph G has a comment here about the Russian subs. And, when I was saying that they've been there the whole time. So, yep, sometimes we get caught. I'll tell you a funny. Down in Panama, just before the Noriega incident, there was we because of the Pueblo, USS Pueblo, AGER-2, and that was in 1969. And then in 1967, we had the USS Liberty that was shot at by the Israeli in the Mediterranean. So all of our SIGINT ships kind of started getting put on combat ships. And so they were short Russian linguists. So they sent us down to Panama, and we would walk down this quay. And so here we were, two Russian linguists walking side by side down the quay. And there were two Russians walking down because they had their trawler on the other side of the same wharf. So we knew they spoke Russian, they are English, and they knew we spoke Russian, but we couldn't speak to each other. We just go down and veer off and go to our own jobs. It was something else. So yeah, we've been doing this for quite some time.
Which military force were you in? Air Force, Navy, Army?
No. You said which military. So then you contradicted that.
I meant United States. Excuse me.
No, Air Force is not military.
It's not?
At least to the rest of us, military is not. They get hazardous duty pay if there's no 5-star hotels within a 25-mile distance from the combat zone. So
I had one brother that was Navy and one brother that was Air Force, but the one that was Air Force went to Syracuse to learn Russian in an intensive program, and then was stationed in Japan to
field station Misawa.
Yeah. But
so I went to Defense Language Institute.
He really enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, I went to the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center, 47 weeks, 8 hours a day for basic Russian. And then 3 years later, I went back for intermediate Russian, and that was 36 weeks, 8 hours a day. So that was at Presidio, Monterey, California. Love Monterey, California. Gorgeous place. Let me see here. Okay, well, let me get into some of my questions of you. So Dave says that you can talk about food and cooking all you want to, and we're going to get into that.
Well,
Yes, go ahead.
I think it's a very important part of prepping. You know, you put all these supplies away, but have you thought about what meals you can make from them? Yeah, beans and rice, but what else can you do? And, you know, it also makes you think once you start cooking, oh gosh, if I don't have my Worcestershire sauce, I can't make this recipe. If I don't have what, and you realize how you have to extend your preps from just your basic proteins and veggies and fruits and the other things you need. So to me, that is important. And how can you cook from just your staples, something that is not in your refrigerator or your freezer? I think that's important to know. And of course, canning. I know that you're going to ask me a question, which is, what's my favorite freeze-dried food? It's going to be hard for me to answer that one. I once had a little Mountain House thing, and I once had an MRE package that was blueberry and oatmeal, and that was actually pretty good. I enjoyed that. But I have freeze-dried food. I have it, but it is my emergency apocalyptic food. Otherwise, I like my home canned.
So that was a little military dig, Patriot Pepper DAV. So the Army and Marines and Navy don't consider the Air Force as being military. They consider them as being quasi-military. But yes, they are an actual military force. They just have 147 combinations of uniforms and get hardship pay if there's no 5-star hotel within 25 miles of the combat zone, whereas we have to go out and slug it in the mud. So that's Prepper Potpourri, and I kind of have the same idea. And if you look back at a lot of my earlier menus, I say come up with a menu. What is it that you want to eat? So let's say tomorrow I'm going to have ham, eggs, toast, jam, and orange juice. Now, that is a menu I can plan. Now I can take that menu to the store and I can get a small can of diced ham. I can get I can order some freeze-dried eggs. I'm going to need some oil to cook it. So now I can start, and that's those cards I showed you, my planning cards. So in my planning cards, what I do is the menu items and then what I have to buy in order to make this come to fruition. So what I do is I plan that menu and I say, what is it that I want to eat? What are all the components I'm going to have down to the condiment as far as salt, pepper, anything like that. And I kind of got that idea from watching Prepper Potpourri. And so, I think that's a very wise way of making sure that you have a complete meal instead of just saying, I'm going to go out and get 5 cans of green beans today.
And you might want to get some chickens too, some laying hens. It tastes better than the, granulated eggs.
Really? That would be in an area other than an HOA. So.
Oh yes, yeah. My son lives in one too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult. Well, so if we were to say that there's all this cacophony of threats out there that and they used to start off the National Geographic. What was the name of that show where they tried to make us look like idiots?
Oh, Doomsday Preppers.
Doomsday Prepper. So they always started out with the question, what are you prepping for? So if we take a look at all those things out there, what are the top priorities that you see that are causing you to be industrious in your prepping?
Number one, the basic things, and you have to look at your geographic area to determine your threats. Where I live, snowstorms, especially ice storms, could cause you to lose power. We've been as long as 5 days, luckily, but it could be 2 weeks before we could get out of our driveway because we're a little rural. And, you got to have the supplies. You got to have a way to heat if, you no longer have power. I mean, once you go into a scenario like that, you almost hit every prepping area, to be
Yep.
honest. But what else do we have? Well, we have tornadoes. Well, you can't really prep for that. I'm sorry. It's going to take away your preps. We don't have to worry about earthquakes where I live. Sure, you could have some people where I live have flooding. But then beyond weather events, I worry about cyber war. I think it could really take down a lot of things. I worry about our power grid going down. Sure, war, but I don't worry about war as much as I worry about some of the other things. And that's probably because war has always been on someone else's land generally, unless it was a civil war. But having cyber attacks or losing our power grid would be here. Maybe a solar event too. And maybe just worry about how our country is separating so and what that means for the future. What do you prep for?
Well, I'm kind of with you. So my experience as an intelligence analyst tells me that Russia and China want our country not for the people, but for the resources. So if they were to initiate a nuclear strike, then they're going to contaminate the very resources that they want to occupy. So I don't think that's going to be a first choice. I think that the first choice is probably going to be some sort of a cyber attack that takes out our grid or something, even against our water purification plants or against our sewage
Yeah.
tanks, something that's going to cause an outbreak of a disease or shorts us as far as there was a study done by Congress that said that 90% of the population will die within 1 year after the electric grid fails. So that seems like the logical one. So I look at, so if I look at my house, what am I really prepping for? I've got two major concerns. Of course, so I've got solar with battery backup, and I'm adding 50% more solar to the house. When they sold me the system, they put it at 90% of average electric consumption. I want it to be 90% of peak electric consumption, and then battery backup for the evenings. Because most of my electric consumption, air conditioner, heating, cooling, etc., is going to be during the daytime. So I want it 90% of the peak, and then I can use the battery for evening. So number one is that electrical grid loss, and then number two is going to be a water loss because we're in severe drought here. So I'm having some rain catchment systems installed. I've got about 300 gallons worth of rain catchment systems that I'm installing here at the house, and then the typical challenge is how does a disabled 70-year-old senior go about doing all the things that these younger kids are being able to do. So how are my wife and I going to be able to do that? So we have to encourage a lot of the younger people around us to join us so that we can use them as the manual labor because I know I'm going to fail there. So that's kind of where we are. I agree with you. I think that our country is at a dividing point. And I think that we are intentionally being divided ideologically, religiously, color-wise, with our language, and we're becoming more balkanized than we are heterogeneous. And so I think that that's going to continue, and I'm afraid for that.
Yep, I am too. The only good part is I might not live long enough to see it.
Now, one of my biggest fears is taking down the sanitation system. And so we had a family member who was one of the first confirmed cases of cryptosporidiosis when our sewage treatment plant backed up. And so I don't wish that on anybody. And if they take out our sewage systems, that's going to cause major problems.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think people consider that at all. Okay, so do you consider yourself primarily a hunker down or a bug out person? And
Oh,
why?
hunker down. And at my age, let's get real. I'm going to go out in 0-degree weather in the winter and go to the woods and make it? Oh, sure, maybe for a couple days, maybe I could. But to be honest, most things that happen doesn't mean that you'd leave your house. I know people think it's going to be FEMA camps and all this, but I think if you think of many of the events, like the ice storm, like drought even, maybe you would have to eventually leave to find water, but I'm going to stay, I'm going to probably be that captain of the ship, and I probably would stay too long if something happened and not leave in time. But you know what? At my age, I can make that decision. Now, that sounds funny. I'm 68 years old, okay? Had a good life. I don't want to be, someone without a home, without walking the streets or whatever, like poor immigrants are doing in other countries right now. It would just be time for me to be done. I'm sorry, but now if my grandkids were here, I'd have to have a whole different viewpoint because I'd have to survive to make sure they do. But, if it's just my husband and I, we've had good lives.
Okay, so Red Scout has a question, and we'll get your answer to it. And it's good to prep, but what is your number one prep?
Well, I'd love to say knowledge because that sounds really good, but I don't think it is. I think my number one prep is water. I have to be honest. You can, live for quite a while with limited food, but we are very lucky where we live. I have a special system put in that I can still get well water right in the house, even when we lose power. To me, you cannot live long without potable water. So.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. And we were talking before the show in the backstage, and I am in the process now of installing I got a 350-gallon rain catchment system that's going to be out here in this corner. And then I've got a 50-gallon barrel right here, just the other side of that painting. And so I'm got 400 gallons worth of rain catchment. And then, of course, we're going to run that water through a Berkey when we bring it into the house, which is one of the things I think I talked about it the last video I did. But, one of the things you want to do is make sure you separate your clean water and your dirty water. So anytime so for example, when I get my rain catchment system and I get a 5-gallon jug and catch it from the rain catchment system and bring it into the Berkey, I'm going to put a big D on that bucket, and that's going to be dirty water, always dirty water. So I'll never use it for clean water. I'm only going to use it for dirty water. And then once that water gets purified through the Berkey, then I will put it in a different container that won't be marked, and that tells me it's clean. So make sure you separate your dirty and your clean waters. It's a fantastic question. Thank you, Red Scout. I have not heard of it. Have you heard of the son of Adam?
No.
Okay. Maybe you can help us out with that there, Red Scout. Okay, so what's your favorite water filter?
Oh, I do not use a Berkey. And I lived on my well water forever. I like it. It does have extra minerals in it. You can see it when you hold it up. I do test it regularly, but I do have personal water filters. I do have, it's called Aqua Blue, I think is it. Okay. I have a bigger one like for camping in that I can use. I also have the filters that can be put in a bucket and make one if I need to. I bought them. It's a cheaper type of Berkey operation. It has both types of filters. But yeah, what is the little one I always use? I'm trying to think right now. Life Straw, yeah. And I say always use. What it means is use it a couple times, but I have it in my EDC kit. I have one in my car. I have one in a bag, that type of thing.
What's your favorite fire starter?
A Bic.
I love the simplicity, of there's a problem that I've seen in our community, And, like, for example, somebody did a fantastic video on how to turn old Crisco into a 100-hour candle.
Yeah.
And so people are buying Crisco so they can make 100-hour candles. Don't buy the
You can get
candles when you have a
100-hour
chance to get the
camera.
candles. And
Yeah.
then the 100-hour Crisco is when it goes bad, when it goes rancid, then you
Yeah.
have something to use it for other than cooking. But while you have the chance, get what you can for the purpose that it is intended now, and then those other things become emergency in case you do run out.
I have ferro rods, and I can start a fire that way. And my husband has a lighter collection, all kinds of lighters. So we're probably covered on that. Oh, and I have matches too. But a Bic is pretty reliable. So
Oh, I'm sorry, Manny. I because I try to focus on preparation and preparedness here rather than religion and politics. My mind doesn't think religion or politics while I'm especially in a live. Just it's one of those things that's very divisive among people, and so I just try to stay away from those kinds of subjects while we're doing a preparedness channel discussion. So yeah, reverse osmosis systems are phenomenal. And that's what the Survivor Filter Pro does. And so that's why I like it. But how about a folding knife? You were talking about that. You said you want it in my pocket.
I took it out just so you can see it.
Okay.
It is a Kershaw. It is a Ken Onion. I think it's called a leek. I'm not sure. It's very thin. I like it, but it's a nice knife. And it's what I carry when I have a pocket. But you do realize that women very often don't have a pocket in their
That's
jeans.
true.
Yes, we are, and we don't have all those additional pockets like those parachute pants and everything. But I also keep one in my car. I don't carry a purse, so I can't say I keep it in my purse. And I have one at work. But this is my favorite. It's went through the washing machine and dryer, and it's still okay because I forget to take it out of my pocket. But the knives I use the most often are probably my Cutco kitchen knives.
Okay.
Yeah. Or my hori in the garden. I love that. It's kind of a knife and trowel combination.
Absolutely, Titan preparedness. You are absolutely correct. Get what you can while you can, and then we'll do the make do stuff later. So do you have a favorite fixed blade knife? Is that going to be your Cutcos?
I do have Moras, in my and I can't say their full name, Markoviv or anyway, whatever it is. I have quite a few of those on different bags and in my car. They're more inexpensive and they work well. So yeah, but now my husband again, he also collects knives. So we have all kinds of knives in this house. But you asked what was mine.
Yeah, I understand. I am the same way. I have a whole bevy of knives, and so trying to pick which one I want to carry is a difficult thing. And I have there's one, if I was going to recommend it for somebody who is just now doing it and doesn't have a very large income. I love my LT Wright Genesis saber grind or Scandi grind. I'm sorry, but that's a $250 knife.
See, yeah.
If you take a look at the Condor bush lore, and you can get it for $50 on Amazon, except for the fact that it has a broomstick handle. In my opinion, it's the same knife as the LT Wright Genesis. And so I have a Condor bush lore. So around the house, if I have something I need to do, that's the knife it's going to be in my hand. So if you want to look for usage scratch marks, it's going to be on my Condor bush lore. One of the cheapest knives I have. You can't go wrong with a Mora bushcraft either.
They're just very dependable. They, like I said, they're not expensive. I have quite a few of them.
Okay. What's your favorite post-apocalyptic movie?
I love zombie movies. I love a lot of different movies. But I think the one that affected me kind of emotionally, I think it was called the day after. It was in the 1980s. It was a TV series where they actually didn't even have commercials. They didn't try to make money off it. Wouldn't happen today. There'd be commercials every 5 minutes. But it was one on what would happen if nuclear war happened. And it wasn't so much pointing the finger at the Russians, pointing the fingers at us. It was kind of, I think, for what stuck in my mind was people still went on with their normal life, knowing that they're dying, basically. Their hair's coming out, or
Was that the one where the doctor, it was in Kansas City, I believe, and the doctor at the very end, his hair was falling out and everything? Okay.
Yeah. He was still a doctor, and even though, everything is going chaotic, he was still a doctor, tried to help people. But the thing is that it brought to, what would happen. We were so used to having all these riches in the United States, being blessed, being number one, and it could be taken away like that. And it made people think at the time. And I think that was it. But I do love really good zombie movies too.
Yeah. So what do you think of what is it? It's Just Us, or just what's
The Last of Us?
The Last of Us, yeah.
I've only watched the first two. I'm 3 behind now. I did not play the game. Now, my sons played the game, so they think it's really fantastic. I thought it was a little boring, moved a little slow, but it at least it didn't make the prepper that they showed a complete fool, except he had way too many things going on. I'm sorry, just one person can't accomplish what he did. But I will watch it. It's interesting, and it brings up the point about, fungus is the one thing we still don't have a lot of ways to kill it if it's in your body. Think of a toenail fungus. Try to get rid of it, and you can lose your liver. So yeah, I will be watching it. And I watched World War Z. I like the book a lot better. The book was much more diverse, I think. But yeah, one that made me think was that, because it was something that could really happen. And luckily, I don't think, I have to worry about zombies at my door quite yet.
Isn't that the truth? So I would say probably my favorite movie was probably either that one or Just Look Up.
I love Just Look Up. And it took place, if you notice, Michigan State.
Yes.
I am an alumni. So
really?
Yeah. But I love it because it was making fun of society now. It's more important that these two people broke up than it is that, an asteroid's coming and going to destroy the world. And I enjoyed it. I expected it to be funnier than it was, but you had to be in the right frame of mind, and then it was very funny. So, and I liked at the very end, again, doing something normal, just eating together, having conversation, knowing this is going to be your last minute on Earth. I thought that was a good ending.
Well, and Lori has done us a favor here, and she's put a link so you can watch the day after for free here on YouTube. So that's fantastic. Thank you for doing that, Lori.
And just remember, it was made in the 1980s. It's not going to have the special effects or anything that you expect nowadays.
So my friend from Australia, Jack, Auslander Info, has joined us, and welcome.
Good day.
Okay, so let me see where we are here. Your favorite series, a fictional series of books?
So it's not just one; it's a whole series. I always like the first book in the series, and then they all go downhill to me. But I'm right now reading one about the UP. It's the Nowhere series. And I like that because all these prepping ones take place generally in Florida or California, Texas, someplace warm. And you think about when it happens in the UP, you've been there. It can be way below zero. It can have really high snow. Survive then. And that's what makes this interesting, because it's a guy from Chicago that comes up to kind of just relax a little bit in a hunting cabin. And if you've ever been in Michigan hunting cabins, you know they are not deluxe whatsoever. They have outhouses even generally. And this all happens to him. And so, it's kind of very interesting. Again, really enjoyed the first book. I'm in the second book, going down. But yeah, otherwise for favorite book, my recent one was called Dry. And it is a teenage novel.
Huh.
And it was what happens when you're in California, you turn on the tap of water and nothing comes out. So it was really good, and it was from a teenage point of view, but how the drought could affect so quickly an area.
So Auslander Info says beans are on the menu. So for those of you who don't know, he put out a short earlier today, and he's got beans in a cauldron over an open fire. And he added what appeared to be, to me, to be a corn mush into it. And I thought, wow, that looks great.
Oh, it wasn't Vegemite, was it?
No. He says it was oil, flour, and oh gosh, what was the paprika, I believe, is what he said that he made into a mush, and then it kind of thickens up the beans, and so I guess that's the Australian way of doing baked beans. And so for those of you, Hello Tofu, or if any of my other moderators could find that Auslander video, it's a 1 minute. If you can find it and put a link to it, I greatly appreciate that. So right now I have two favorite series of books, and we're doing one of them in our fiction book club. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I didn't mean to hit you. So the American, and this one takes place in Florida. This is, a lot of people call it the Going Home series. So we're going to be on volume 5 in our book club the last Thursday of this month. And so that's Resurrecting Home. And then he's been on the channel, and he's agreed to come back to discuss that. And then I also like the Stephen C. Smith Stonemont series. This takes place in Kansas. So this is a little bit colder for you. Not quite as cold as the UP or Northern Michigan. I did an interview with Schwann's to be VP of Quality, and they flew me up, and I flew into Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they have their own private airplane that goes from there to their headquarters. They have their own runway and airport there. Then when I got into town, everything is underground. Nobody walks above ground. You take these tunnels underneath because the snow can get like up to 12 feet high in the streets. And instead of cleaning the streets, they just use the tunnels. I thought that was pretty neat. So I guess that's how a lot of the far northern Americans live.
I think it is interesting, though, that a lot of the prepper books are of warmer things. They sometimes are making their way home to Montana or Washington, but they start out in the thing. And a lot of them are from a male perspective. I think we talked a little bit about that. There was a series, now I'm going blank again. Did I try to see if I put it down? Oh, it was called the Journal series by Deborah Moore. And Lisa from Sutton's Days had the author on the channel. And I read some of those books. Again, they were set in the UP. This is a person who actually lived in the UP, went from Detroit, which is too different, believe me, Detroit to the UP. But again, how she survived, and a lot of it, of course, was she had food put away and was used to living. You had to have firewood. You already had, you could lose power easily up there. You could have those snowstorms, whatever. So in some ways, better prepared than those in the lower Michigan. But eventually, you got a lot of your supplies from somewhere else, which is why I say Alaska is the worst place for people to go. I don't understand why people think that is where you go as a prepper, because they get, their flour, everything else is coming from that lower 48. I'm sorry. Unless you can really exist just on fish and what wildlife you can kill, all your other things, which flour is a biggie, is coming from the lower 48. there's just a very small area in Alaska that can grow their own food.
That's true. That's very true. And I think Alaska Prepper has shown that what he does, he has to do in a greenhouse. And so I like a lot of what he does.
Yeah, and he's he's very good at shopping at Costco and getting all of those supplies and telling people what you can get. He's also good about giving to the people who don't have food in the community.
Wow. Okay. How about your favorite nonfiction prepping book?
I think you had originally said, what one book would I take from my library?
Yep.
And boy, I wish I could show you. My library's right over there. It's pretty big. It would really be hard because it would depend on what's happening, you know. But a book that I think most people aren't aware of is called Camping in Wilderness, and it's by Paul, I wrote it down, Tawell. And it's a thick book, but it has everything, like what wildlife is there, what spiders, what do you do to find water in the desert, what do you do to find water somewhere else. It's just all these little type things, and it's an older book. It's probably 20 years old, but it's a great reference book on a lot of different things, and maybe how to cook over a campfire, and what happens if someone gets bit by a snake or whatever. It's got a lot of information.
So back in 1947, they came out with the Boy Scout Field Book. And it's an old brownish colored book with color photos and a lot of drawings. And I would say if I had one book that I would keep in my library for a post-apocalyptic survival, it would be the Boy Scout Field Book, not the handbook, but
not the handbook. Yeah. I had to get that on eBay. So
I ordered it. I couldn't find mine, so I ordered one on eBay. Then my mother passed away, and so my sister was divvying up all of her belongings and everything else. She came across a Foot Locker full of all my old Boy Scout stuff. So my merit badge books, that field handbook, and then my merit badge sash and everything else. So I've got that now. So now I have 2 copies of the Boy Scout Field Book, but that would be my number one choice. Let me see here if we got anything. So Red Scout, as I said, yes, we read the Bible here. Yes, we are a religious channel. We promote religion. We admire people who have religion. That's just not the topic of our discussion here this evening. And if I have a video where I'm willing to discuss religion, I would like to have you on there and discuss religion with it. However, for this evening, that is not the topic of our discussion, okay? So if you could respect that, I would greatly appreciate that. The Left Behind series, I probably don't want to mention too much about that.
I did read it. So
yeah, it's premillennial eschatology is I'm really sorry, but I know when the premillennial eschatology did not exist, and then in 1970, Hal Lindsey wrote his book, and it was while I was in seminary, and he came out with his book, The Late Great Planet Earth, and that's when all this premillennial eschatology started kicking up. So, but once again, I would prefer that not be the topic of discussion this evening. I would like to keep it on preparedness and survivalism. Okay, Jack has come back in. It was paprika, fried up and added in the last 10 minutes or so. And it's an Austro-Hungarian way of making a pot of beans extra tasty. Thank you, Jack. So we did get that link up there. 2 different moderators put that link up there, so you can catch that if you want to. Let me see. Okay. Favorite, we'll just change it and call it survival food. So if you were going to store something, I asked you originally, long-term style, but is there a menu or a recipe or something you just got to have in your prepping?
Just one, huh? Um,
Okay, you can have three.
so I made a good dish again Saturday, and my oldest son stopped over, which he does very often because his wife is a pescatarian, which means she only eats fish or seafood. So he really likes to have some meat.
Uh,
Um, and it was very simple. All it was putting it in a pie plate. Uh, I can pork stew with actual sweet potatoes in the pork stew. And so I put that in. I put in some extra pork meat that I canned, and then I just opened a can of corn and a little can of mixed vegetables. And then for the kind of gravy type, I used a golden mushroom soup, a little soy sauce, and some broth from the stew. Mix that up, put that in, and then mixed up just a packaged cornbread and put that batter on top. And you cook it for only a half hour, and it's really, really good. So something like that I like is simple. And if you didn't have this, you could do it, I suppose, with Dinty Moore stew and make a beef one. It is something you could use all your canned goods for. But that's the kind of thing that's fun to kind of explore. What can I do with what I have?
I have long held the personal opinion that in a post SHTF environment, we're going to go back to the Middle Ages. And the vast majority of what we eat are going to be soups, stews, and casseroles.
Yeah.
And what we can get into basically in a cauldron or in a Dutch oven. And so I think that's what we kind of need to focus on. That was what the Vikings did to sustain themselves. That's what the people in the Middle Ages did. They could throw grass into a pot and turn it into something. So there's something in the military we call nail soup, or some people have
It
called it
doesn't
different
sound
things.
good.
Well, so the story goes that there was a pilot who was shot down over Italy, and it just so happened that he was of Italian ancestry and he could speak Italian. And he was hiding in a barnyard, and he was dying of hunger. So he found a pot of water, and he put a nail in it. And one of the Italian people came in and saw him and said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm cooking nail soup." And they said, "Well, what does it taste like?" He says, "Oh, the rule of nail soup is you can't get a taste unless you add something to it." So he came back with some onions, and then he goes, "Oh, that's pretty good." And another guy comes with some carrots. And so as more people added more stuff to the soup to get a taste of it, then you had a real combination soup with all kinds of vegetables and meats in it. And so what we used to do back in the Vietnam days with sea rations was the first sergeant would have a 5-gallon pot on a potbelly stove. It'd be half full of water, and you would come in with your entree can from your sea rations and dump it into that pot. And then you could take out one ladle of the soup. So everybody had to put in one can to get out one ladle. And I think that worked pretty well. And I think that's what I'm going to do here for the community, for my neighborhood in a post SHTF environment, is I'm going to have Bear Creek starter for a soup. And then you can have some as long as you put something into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, soups and stews fill up your tummy and your soul. It's comfort food.
Yeah. So Alstein Rampo's got his scary movies or movies from this 1960s. I think one of my favorites was an old episode of Twilight Zone, and it's
The one.
called The Bunker.
Oh, I know
And
that one where the neighbors are
yeah,
knocking on.
so there's three or four different families sitting at the dinner table, and all of a sudden the air sirens go off and everything else. The other three families haven't done anything to prepare, and one family has. So they go down to their bunker. Well, their neighbors are wanting to come into the bunker with them, and they're keeping them locked out and saying, "No, there's no room," and everything else. Then they find out it was a false alarm.
False
Now
alarm.
you got to kind of get back together as
The
neighbors.
neighbors, yeah.
When you tell your neighbors, "I don't care about you, I want you to die," which is basically the way they're interpreting it. And oh my gosh, what a movie that was. That was kind of a, makes you think, what am I going to do in the case of something like that? Okay, so that's basically all the questions I had. And I've been looking and seeing if anybody else has any questions of you. So one of the things that I'm interested in, and I've got two people here. I've got I got Potpourri, and and I'm just getting into canning. I want to be totally honest with that.
Okay.
It's been something that I've uh, put aside as not a priority, and now I think it's coming more to being more of a priority. So I want a strong pressure canner that I can theoretically put on a grate over charcoal. I don't want something electric. I want something that's, because I realize that at some point we're going to run out of gas, we're going to run out of propane, we're going to run out of electricity. So what kind of pressure cooker should I get that I can use over a fire?
I don't think there's any that says you could use it over a fire, but an All-American is the thickest pressure canner that I know of, the way it's made of it. It's very thick, it's very heavy. So I would think you would have the best luck with that. There are camping pressure cookers, but they are not made supposedly for a campfire. Because I checked them out. I thought, oh, that's great. I'm going to get it. And I do have a little halulite one, but they're saying to use them on a camp stove. And they're very thinner metal, whatever. I still think All American, which is an expensive choice, is probably your best bet.
Okay, great. So Titan Preparedness has a question for you. What's your biggest prepping mistake or biggest mistake being on YouTube?
My biggest prepping mistake was watching channels in the beginning, kind of when I got into it, and probably buying freeze-dried food because we haven't used it. It's downstairs. It's probably fine, but I already canned and whatever. I mean, why did I feel like I need to do that? That's because that's what preppers do, right?
Yeah.
And also I got a little bit more into bushcrafting and stuff. It was fun, but really you don't need to have that. So I got kind of down different paths. Now I loved making kits, even though I hardly use my EDC or anything. I love making them. I have fun doing it. Again, though, a lot of that was probably wasted time. Do I need a bug out bag? Well, what did I just say? I'm probably never going to bug out. I do have a bag. Instead, I call it my getting home bag, and I keep it.
Yeah. Same here.
But you heard things and you thought, this is the way I have to go. This is what I have to do. And my biggest mistake being on YouTube. I think mainly that would be just that I still, if someone says something rather mean, it still affects me. So comments still affect a YouTuber, no matter how many comments they get. And like if somebody says, well, I mean, I made one on race storage, which I thought was pretty good. You spend a lot of time editing and doing these things for videos. Believe me, shooting the videos is the easy part. And somebody said, well, no new information here. And it was like, wow, I really worked hard. It's supposed to be a guide for newbies,
Yeah.
But those type of things, it's hard to put on what I call the Teflon, so the mud slides right off.
Yeah, there are those people out there. I've had, of course, I was a CBRN NCO in the Army. And so one of the things we know when we go through a battle zone that's been irradiated is that water itself, H2O, does not become irradiated after a nuclear blast. What happens is the fallout that has been irradiated falls into the water, dissolves in it, and so it's not really the water itself that's irradiated, it's the dissolved solids in it.
Contaminated, yeah.
So if you can remove those dissolved solids, you've got good, clean water. Well, I've got two different guys that say that doesn't make any sense to them. So they did 20-minute hate Lee videos, and that's my biggest mistake in YouTube is responding to them, and I don't do that anymore.
That's what my son says. Just say, just give him a little heart so it gets out of your comments, whatever.
Yeah, no comments, just a heart. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, or we all have differing opinions. Thank you for sharing yours, and
now Titan Preparedness, I will tell you my biggest prepping mistake was investing in cheap shelving.
It all fell down.
Yep. And I've had two big prepping mistakes. And my other one was I started working on my bug out bag, get home bag, whatever you want to call it, back in 1982. And so the reason people don't want to buy pre-assembled bags is because they say you got to do too much swapping out and improving and all this other kinds of stuff. Guess what? That bag that I had in 1982, nothing in it except for the bag itself was the same in 2015 as it was in 1982. I constantly swapped
We're
out,
swapping it
improved,
out. Yep.
updated.
Yep.
So you're
Yep.
going to do it regardless of whether it's pre-assembled or you assemble it yourself. It's going to be improved. You're going to swap things out. So that's a lousy excuse. However, my biggest mistake was I used my my bug out bag as my get home bag. It was in the back of my car and it got stolen. And I did not have an itemized list of everything that was in the bag and its original cost. So I probably lost at least $1,000 in my insurance claim and trying to replace it because I did not have an itemized list. So
it's
if
good
I
to
could
take
make
a little video of it too.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so if you put
Make
it on your
yourself a
channel, then you've got it forever. See, you can just point it.
absolutely.
There it
You
is.
got it. Okay.
I also people should do that for home inventory as somebody who's been through a fire. At least do a video inventory of what you have.
Yeah. Okay, S.J. Mullen agrees with you that All American is the best, and it's the largest heavy duty. So Dragon Slayer says he has an electric one. I would do electric if I was 100% sure that my solar system and my battery backup is going to work in a post SHTF environment. I am not so sure I'm going to have a whole bunch of electricity to spare for canning. I want to focus it on other things, on some of the reasons. So the reason I got whole house solar is because of the book 1 Second After.
Mm-hmm.
And
I did enjoy that first book in the series.
Yeah. So I mean, we have a brittle type 1 diabetic here, and so I said, you know what? I will not lose somebody because I did not prepare to have refrigerated insulin available as long as I can acquire insulin. And so that's kind of been a number one prepping thing for me.
I just would say for the electric pressure canner, it doesn't contain as many jars as you can for an All-American, but also it's pretty new. I don't think it's going to last like an All-American will. It's just not made the same. Electrical appliances generally don't last that long right now. Think about it. How long does my wall oven, it made what, 12 years? And they said, oh, you did pretty good. 12 years. A cooktop, 8 years we had to replace it. Things don't last that long. So if you depend on something that plugs in, I don't know. Just saying.
Thank you, His Amazing Grace. You are absolutely right. Rose Red Homestead is phenomenal. And she does a lot of great stuff. And so I strongly recommend, if you aren't watching her, I strongly recommend her. She does fantastic content. And it is realistic, long-term survival prepping. So what I did was when mine got stolen out of the back of my car, there's a triangle we use in the quality effort. And so it's, up top, you've got cost. And then down here at this point of the triangle, you've got speed. And then down here, you've got value, so you can only get 2 of the 3. So if you want it to be good cost and good quality, it's going to take you a long time to put it together. If you want it to be low cost and quick, you're going to spend a lot of money. So, you take a look at 2 of those. You can only get 2 of the 3. You can't get all 3 of them. So I wanted a quick, inexpensive bag that I could update as I did my original bag because I felt naked without one in my car. And I got the Echo Sigma Get Home bag. And you know what? Very little of it I've added to it, but I haven't really replaced that much. So I'm a strong proponent of Echo Sigma bags. That's what replaced the one that I had for, close to 40 years, 35 years. Okay, so we are right at that hour mark, hour and 10-minute mark. Any final thoughts, suggestions, or recommendations that you'd like to give to those people, either new or experienced?
Just answer that question. I don't know what a flat is. Do you mean the lid that goes on the jar? If so, I also have ones that are not the metal lids, normal ones. There's ones that you can reuse. Ask me if I've ever tried them. No, but I do have them just in case because I'm a big 4 jars person. I do love their lids. But for anybody, just prepping is a journey. Okay, you're never going to get everything. You're never going to be completely safe. Just work on it, but at the same time, enjoy your life. That's the most important thing. Because who
Amen.
knows when it gets taken from you.
Yeah, and one of the things, and we've had a couple where we've talked to some social workers. We've had uh, prepping with Sarge, and we've had
Charge, yeah.
we've had a couple really good discussions around getting your mind in the right place for what we're going to do. And so one of the things you don't want to deprive yourself of before SHTF is the joy of living.
Hmm.
And so take a look on a daily basis. Yeah, do something for prepping, but don't let it consume you. Remember that you're a human being first, and humans were put on earth to love each other. And so all this bickering and everything else that's going on out there, and people want to put negative comments in the comments, you know, um, I don't understand it, but just smile and love people. And if we can just understand that we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together, that's my mantra. Just remember, we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other because togetherness is the key. And so that's how I normally close, but I also close all of my lives with one others. And so I'm going to pick up the book of Numbers and going to say, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. So thank you, all of you. And gosh, there were some new people that I saw here this evening. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. We do interviews and live discussions every Monday at 8 p.m. Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., we have a nonfiction book club. So right now we're discussing a book on the decline and decay. So what are strategies for surviving in the coming apocalypse by A. American and Alan Kay. On the last Thursday of the month, we have our fiction book club. We're doing the Going Home series from A. American. And then next month, we're going to do the third Thursday as well as the last Thursday. And the third Thursday of the month, we're going to be doing Stephen Smith's new book, Book 6 of the Stonemont series. And that is Hostage to Fortune. So that's kind of where we are with all those stuff. I know I told you I was going to come back and start doing my Saturday. I'll follow you if you follow me type of a thing. But then I reread the YouTube agreement, and they highly discourage that. You can lose your channel for doing that. So I'm not going to do that on Saturdays. So with that, thank you all so much for being, and thank you, Prepper Potpourri,
Thank
for
you.
giving us
Thank
your
you,
time.
everyone.
I am so glad you got your internet back and the electricity and everything else. So wishing you a safe and happy winter. Thank you all for being here and have a fantastic evening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.